Thomas writes separately because he wants to answer a question that no one fucking asked him.
Right.
In a footnote, he says, re-examination may be warranted as to whether 1983 even supplies a freestanding cause of action.
Yeah. That last part was, I was like, oh my God. He thinks that like too many rights have been recognized under 1983.
Welcome to Seriously, the podcast that dives into the baffling.
We can't send them to a prison where there's animals, where there's livestock.
The ridiculous.
Like omelets better than sex.
And downright unbelievable political climate in red states like Louisiana.
So we can't go there. There's no vegan jail.
Seriously.
Welcome back to Seriously. We have been on a much needed break.
Yes.
But we are back.
Yay!
I'm excited.
Season 2.
That's right. Yeah. So we're going to talk today about the end of the last Supreme Court term, and we're going to talk about major decisions that are relevant to the work that we do, but just kind of relevant in general.
And particularly relevant to civil rights work, I think.
Correct.
In general. Yeah.
Yes. But before we jump into that, do you want me to start with my Seriously?
You start.
Because there was a lot. I have a bunch.
Well, it's been how long? Like 6 weeks? So, I mean, it's 6 weeks during the Trump administration, and also with Jeff Landry as our governor,
right,
is like 6 years. So, yeah. There's been a lot.
Yeah. So one of the things that made me think seriously was last week, actually, I read an article that Blake Miguez, who is running for Senate against Senator Cassidy.
As discussed in our podcast with Rep. Mandy Landry.
That's right. Listeners may remember his ridiculous campaign launch ad. Well, apparently he shot a hunting dog, not his hunting dog, some other person's hunting dog. And, I mean, he's just, what a fucker.
Yeah, no, you sent that article.
Yeah.
And it's a real seriously. We should put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
Like this happened like a couple years ago with this woman whose dog it was, who trains hunters, and she's the one speaking out about it.
Everybody knows that I hunt with my poodles and I'm a huge breed advocate. I'm also a dog trainer and a hunting guide. And I don't care if you vote left or right, but there is a guy running for office. His name is Blake Miguez, and he shot my dog. Laughed about it. I was guiding a hunt a few years ago, and he shot my poodle Pointer Winnie. I've done hunt tests with her. I've guided hunts over her for many, many years. And this guy shot a bird on the ground and shot my dog. I left him in the field and drove my dog to the vet because I was so worried. She was covered in blood. Never said anything rude to him. I actually got banned from the ranch after this. He laughed about it. He never checked on my dog, calls himself a sharpshooter. Well, who shoots a bird on the ground? To all my hunting guides out there, all my hunters, who shoots a bird on the ground? He laughed about pulling a Dick Cheney during my safety speech. Listen, I've been guiding hunts for many, many years. I've never had a dog shot other than the one time by that awful man. And he did not give one shit about my dog.
The whole thing is unbelievable. Because also Miguez, he calls the story misdirection. Like, he doesn't say, like, this isn't true, this didn't happen, or I didn't do that. But they do have one of our other favorites come into his defense. Good old Alan Seabaugh sent out a statement, who was in that hunting party, like just basically attacking the woman whose dog it was, and, you know, just being a regular old Alan Seabaugh asshole. So, yeah. So this article features not one, but two assholes in our Senate.
Yeah. Yeah. It's gross.
No one denies this occurred. I'd like to make that
right.
clear.
Yes. So, you know, no one is denying that he shot a dog. What is the fucking deal with these people shooting dogs?
I don't know. It's unbelievable. this was in reckless disregard for the dog's health and safety.
Yeah.
I mean, there's, the like Christy Nome where it was intentionally to kill a dog. I mean, I don't understand.
When you watch all those like serial killer shows, it's like
Correct.
one of the big indicators is like
Tortures
people who,
animals.
Yeah, like hurt animals. I'm just saying.
Yeah. I think that's a pretty good analogy.
Yeah.
We're just, worth considering voters.
Okay. So also our governor is, he's decided to cancel $3 billion in coastal restoration.
Well, he's canceled the whole Barataria
Exactly.
spillway, the whole plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which in my former life, I worked on a lot of the restoration plans, getting public input. And I mean, we need to do these kinds of projects to protect our coastline. We lose like a football field of coastline every, year in Louisiana. I mean, we don't have very much protection against hurricanes, sea level rise. This was like a big project that was fully funded by the BP oil spill settlement.
Their rationale, is that this isn't the best way to do it. There's like controversial science on it, and there is controversial. So I mean, it was controversial. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah,
there's
100%.
gonna be some costs and benefits, but like a lot of time, a lot of research, a lot of thought went into this, and there isn't an alternative plan in place. It's like they're just like, we're not going to do this thing that we have the money for, and that has been heavily researched and is like in the works.
Yeah, we've already invested over $100 million into this.
We're going to do something else because there's a better plan that's like,
I don't know what, we're going to save our coast by just throwing people's like used Christmas trees into the fucking marsh every year.
Well, I mean, and there are other things, obviously I'm not an expert in this area. You are far more than I am, but like the engineering of it, you can do it, rather than a diversion or you just building up, barrier islands or like whatever. There's other stuff that could be done in addition or instead, but like they're not doing that. There's no plan. So, I mean, then just even in like the absolute best case scenario, if we believe them, which I don't, that they're like gonna try to put another plan in place, we're gonna lose, years in the interim when nothing is happening.
Yeah. So that was dumb. Let's see. Oh, Colbert is being fired.
Yes, right. Yeah.
He's going out with a bang, though. His show has gotten really good. It's really good.
I need to watch.
And then South Park is also like completely out of control.
I love that.
I haven't watched South Park since high school, and
I watched it in that's would have been the same time period, but
because you're so much older.
That's
than me.
right. Nice try. I've had it.
Yeah,
I think it's about the same. I'm 4 years older than you, so I think it's the same as Angie and Jennifer.
It's 100% true. So if people are not watching South Park or Colbert, I highly recommend that you just, jump back in. It's very funny.
Like the Colbert right before they announced, that they're canceling him, where he was like talking shit about, the CBS settlement with, the FCC, the Trump administration, and that, basically it's like, to facilitate the approval of their, merger with Paramount or whatever the fuck. And he's like, I think there's a technical term for that. It's called a bribe. I was like, that's exactly right.
Oh, but the Supreme Court doesn't recognize bribes.
That's correct. Yeah.
That's not a crime.
That's why you can do it.
Yeah, it's not a crime.
Don't worry. It's no big deal.
Yeah.
No quid pro quo.
Nope. It's fine. Okay, the military is denying early retirement for transgender service members. This is new. So people who have been serving in the military, transgender service members for like 15, 18 years, they're being pushed out and they're denying them all of the benefits that they've earned. I mean...
What?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, why? Because like they shouldn't have been in the military to begin with?
I guess.
Or just like they have to sign off on early retirement. That's
no, they're like, I think some of them are like, okay, well, you're forcing me out. I'm going to retire early and take my benefits. And they're like, no, we're just kicking you out. Fuck you. You don't get your fucking benefits.
Oh, wow. Wow.
That is...
Wow. I mean, that's just disgraceful.
It's just disgusting.
Yeah.
And it's also just like, again, the fucking cruelty. It's like, we can't just deport people. We have to like go throw them in, the Everglades and let the fucking alligators eat them.
Or like into Sudan, like a failed state.
Right. I mean...
And it's more of also with Trump in particular, with like all his like ballyhooing that he's, like for veterans. Like there's literally no evidence of that. Everything that every policy decision and also just like personal comments that he makes is like extremely anti-veteran. Yeah. Like it's
unless you're a veteran that stormed the Capitol and, took a shit in the rotunda, then
but that's unrelated to veteranness.
I don't know if veteranness is a word.
It's not a protected class.
TM.
We're going to be getting into that. Yeah. That's because you're a veteran of the insurgents.
Right. Exactly. You're a veteran of the coup.
Yes.
I'm going to let you get to yours, but again, we were gone for a while. But this was the most seriously thing that I experienced on our time off, is that my fucking AC went out. And it was out for like 9 days. And
it's been so hot.
Oh my God. I mean, we were pushing heat indexes of like 110 degrees. It was completely miserable. Listeners need to understand that I have 2 huskies. I know it's cruel to have huskies in a place like Louisiana, but when you have AC, for the most part, they're okay. This was like completely miserable. I had to buy one of those portable AC units so that I could keep like one room in my house, like even tolerable to exist in. The AC guy was like at my house every single day. He kept fixing things, and then that wasn't the problem, and he'd come back and fix another thing, and that wasn't the problem. So basically, in the end, they just completely rebuilt my AC unit, which is good because it is working now. But I thought that like there was going to be a murder-suicide situation happening at my house, like,
and also dog. You might have shot a dog.
Yeah. Or the dogs just would have, eaten us or something. Oh my God, it was so awful.
At my house, then 2 different times, then the AC has gone out upstairs, but like. I literally have said to everybody, so yeah, tip to, you don't have 2 stories. Tip to listeners, if you have 2 stories at your house, make sure you have a bedroom downstairs, because I do. And so when this has happened, then I can just come stay downstairs, like just live in my own guest room.
Yeah.
Yeah, and only go upstairs to like get clothes. Yeah.
Oh my God. It was awful. It was awful. Yeah, and the thing is like, if I had known that it was going to be 9 days without AC, like we would have evacuated. Yeah. I would have like rented an Airbnb.
You did eventually.
Yeah, we ended up going to get a hotel room for at least one night. And then, my daughter and I went and stayed at my dad's house because he was out of town. And oh my God.
Another veteran.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good veterans. What's your seriously?
Well, so my which I'm sure there's 50 million things, but as we were just talking about this, and it just happened. It is a big, big seriously, which is that Planned Parenthood is closing in Louisiana, like entirely. Both their clinic in Baton Rouge and their beautiful, multi-million-dollar clinic in New Orleans, which both you and I have gone to as adults for healthcare ourselves.
That's right. I was at the opening of that clinic.
And I was there as a patient, whenever the last time I went to the doctor, so, a couple years ago. But it really took me by surprise. Obviously Planned Parenthood has, been under attack with all the defunding crap, which obviously is in the first case that we're about to talk about, with not allowing them to participate in the Medicaid program. But I was really, really, really shocked. And they, according to the news article I saw, then they saw like more than 10,000 patients last year, which doesn't surprise me. And those numbers have actually been very consistent from when they were fighting the Medicaid defunding here years ago. That's about what it was. Like they see about 10,000 patients every year in Louisiana. And of course, they don't provide abortions, and they never have.
They have never provided abortions. So
that's right.
We're just kicking them out of Medicaid and fucking with them and forcing them, to close their doors to patients that are going there for cervical cancer screenings, pap smears, STD, testing, treatment.
That's right. Birth control, STIs, and cancer screenings are like literally all they do.
Yeah.
And also, like, again, with, my joke about it's the last doctor I ever went to is like most women's OBs are their de facto primary healthcare provider.
Yeah,
people
they
don't
go
really
to them
have
every
a
year.
primary
Right.
healthcare provider. Yeah, so like it's really like the primary point of access to care for most women of reproductive age.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not like, it's not
depressing.
like we have a lot of OBs in Louisiana.
No, we have a
It's not
provider
like we
shortage.
exactly. Like it's, like, oh, well, where, I mean, yeah, it's really,
The thing that
really shocking.
fucks with me the most about this is like, I swear to fucking God, if they turn the Planned Parenthood clinics into crisis pregnancy centers, I will lose my fucking mind. I will lose my mind. So we cannot let that happen.
No.
And completely, again, relevant to the lead-in to the first case that we're going to talk about, which is Medina.
It's Medina, actually. I thought it was Medina, but thanks to you, now I have listened to all of those oral arguments and also been forced to read the opinions, which, as I told you before, I hate you for. But I did it so you guys don't have to.
That's right. I only gave you 2 cases.
Medina versus Planned Parenthood.
Yeah. So what was this case about?
So this is a case that comes from South Carolina. That is about South Carolina kicking Planned Parenthood out of the Medicaid program. So, a lot of states have tried this over the years. I mean, right now, then, they're trying this on the federal level in the big, beautiful bill. Then that has a provision that is for this same purpose. But, Louisiana has tried this. Texas has tried this. South Carolina, I'm sure there are others. Basically, what the state says is just you, Planned Parenthood, cannot participate in our Medicaid program anymore because you provide abortions.
Right.
So even though Medicaid doesn't pay for abortions anyway,
That's right.
But like because you do this other thing, then we're not going to let you participate in Medicaid for all of the other services that you provide. Calling it defunding, like I actually think that that's like been that's a huge mistake about how this has been branded the whole time. Like it's not, the government isn't, or Medicaid isn't funding Planned Parenthood.
It's not like they give Planned Parenthood a chunk of money.
Correct.
Planned Parenthood
perform
provides
services,
to people who are enrolled in Medicaid,
and then
they
that's right.
seek reimbursement
That's
for
correct.
those services.
That's exactly right. So when you kick somebody out, then it means that they cannot see Medicaid beneficiaries
Which
at all.
is the vast majority of the people
That's
that
right.
seek services at Planned Parenthood.
That's right. I mean, according to like news reporting, then nationwide, it's like 50%. In Louisiana, it's always been more than that.
Yeah.
It's because there's just so many Medicaid patients here. Like we states like Louisiana that are fucking broke have a higher percentage of the population that are Medicaid recipients like already.
Right.
So the whole point of this, of course, is for that purpose, right? 50%, 60%, whatever of like the money that keeps your doors open. Again, not as a gift, as just a reimbursement for the work that you're doing. If like we're going to say that like you can't do that work anymore because we're not going to reimburse you for it, then that's like all of your reliable income stream is gone.
That's right.
So that's the position that they're putting Planned Parenthoods in like nationwide now. That's what South Carolina did. South Carolina says we can do this because we have the right to administer our Medicaid program. And we have the right to say who gets to participate or not, including who is a, quote, qualified provider.
Right.
Providers, doctors, facilities, whatever, can be kicked, it can be disallowed from participating in Medicaid for a variety of reasons, like being convicted of a felony, an excessive amount of malpractice cases against you. Like, if you're not qualified, if you're a bad doctor,
right, then
the state can say, well, we're not letting you see our Medicaid patients. Like, this is not, we're not. You can't participate.
Yeah.
So their position is that, like, we can do that for any reason. Though we can kick somebody out for a different reason, which here being that, like, you provide abortions.
Right.
The issue is, and this is the same. The legal argument here is the same as has been litigated in Louisiana, litigated in Texas, litigated in a bunch of other states. But this is the first time that the Supreme Court has weighed in on this. Is that the Medicaid statute has a provision, that's the any qualified provider provision, which says that a Medicaid beneficiary is allowed to go, is given the benefit of, has the right to, that's the whole crux of the case, but like that a Medicaid recipient can go to any qualified provider who's willing to take them.
Right.
Point of it being that, like, you're not, the state is not allowed to say, okay, well, we're giving you the benefit of Medicaid, but you can only see X, Y, and Z doctor. Mm-hmm. That's it. Even if they take Medicaid, even if they're, perfectly good doctor and they're in our program, it doesn't matter. You can't go to private people. You can only go to these state-run facilities or something along those lines.
Well, and that provision was enacted because, like, they came back and added that in because states were doing that.
What I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. They were like, nah, we're going to, like, you're a second-class citizen. We're going to, like, relegate you to only these people in the program. So that's the basis on which the Planned Parenthood challenged the South Carolina kicking them out of the program. They filed suit with a patient. So that's a provision that the argument is that a patient has the right to enforce, that they can challenge the state kicking the person out. So this has been this has been a heavily litigated issue for many years in many circuits, and there's been circuit splits on this about whether a patient can do that, whether the patient has standing to do that. Basically, that, like, only certain statutes confer a private right of enforcement, like, meaning that you as a person can sue under that statute. So, like, one example where that is not true, that, like, people can probably easily understand, but it's always sort of surprising to people, is that HIPAA does not provide a private right of enforcement. Somebody violates your HIPAA rights, like the doctor releases your shit, puts it on the internet, or accidentally leaves it out for everybody to find, whatever. Then people are always like, well, I want to sue that doctor. You cannot do that. HIPAA does not have a private right of enforcement. The only enforcement mechanism is through the Office of Civil Rights, which is run through HHS. So, like, if you were that patient and that happened to you, you can file a complaint with the Office of Civil Rights, and they will supposedly investigate it, and maybe they will fine the doctor, or maybe they will put restrictions on them, or make them come up with a compliance plan, whatever. But it's the government, the only enforcement mechanism and the only remedy is through the government. You yourself, you can't sue for damages. You can't sue for an injunction. You can't sue to say, like, can you please just, like, make sure that my doctor, like, doesn't do this again? Nope. Your doctor can keep doing it until the federal government, maybe comes in and says, like, hi, HIPAA's a thing. You're not allowed to do this.
So during the oral arguments, a lot of what they focused on was, like, does this any qualified provider basically say that you have a right,
That's
even
right.
though it doesn't use that word necessarily. Like, you can go, like, you have a choice, blah, blah, blah. Like,
yeah.
And Kagan even was just like, trying to explain the statute. She's like, I don't even know how to say it
Right.
without saying
That's right. I was
that
just
they have a
trying to
right.
say it without,
exactly.
The state has an obligation to provide this particular thing, right, which is the state has an obligation to ensure that a person, I don't even know how to say this without saying right, has a right to choose their doctor. That's what this provision is. It's impossible to even say the thing without using the word right.
So yeah, so that's the actual legal issue. So like I said, not all statutes confer a private right of action. You know, some statutes can only be enforced by the federal regulatory authorities. If South Carolina or whatever state just like violates this, just like blatantly violates it, the same with the doctors throwing your medical records in the street, like just like there's no argument that like they have just like blown through any qualified provider provision, then is the remedy only that the Secretary of HHS can tell the state, well, we're not giving you Medicaid money anymore. Like, we're taking your Medicaid money away.
So
because
denying
you
Medicaid coverage for everybody in the state for every kind of health care, no matter what, because that seems crazy. Like,
well,
of course, the agency
happened.
is not going to do that. So, like, a private right of action, it seems to be the only way to enforce this.
Practically speaking, then yes. I mean, the federal government is not going to do that. So it's not going to get remedied. Because, like, again, so the way that would work, it's a little bit different than HIPAA. Like, it wouldn't be for this specific thing. It's like that the Secretary of Health and Human Services, the federal one, like all of these things, like the qualified provider, there's like a gajillion things that states have to do in order to receive federal funding for Medicaid. And if they don't substantially comply with those gajillion things, then the government, that's the conditions the government has put on that funding. So if you don't do it, then the government can say, fuck you, we're taking our money away.
Yeah.
But like, there's a gajillion things. So like, you know, if you're going to be kind of substantially complying probably with most of them, or the federal government's not going to fucking care. I mean, the Trump administration's never going to do this like in a situation like this. But the purpose of that is like for the federal government to have a remedy if like it turns out that like it's like a bank giving you a loan, right? Mm-hmm. And like they've got, you know, there's things you have to do. You got to keep, if it's for your house, you know, you have to have insurance, you know, you have to make your payments, whatever. You know, like there's conditions that the bank has set that you have to do, or they'll take it back. They'll take the money back. Like, that's like in a sort of a global sense. That's the bank's remedy. This is the same with the federal government. Like, we're giving you a bunch of money for you to use for something we think is important. But you got to do this, and this.
Yeah.
And
you have obligations.
Yes. And if you don't, then we don't believe that you're using that money the way that we intended you to use it, or in like a fiscally responsible way. So we're going to take it back. Right. That's the purpose of that. But like this stuff has to do with like, are there rights, though, within that concept, within the spending clause concept, then does it also confer private rights? The statute then has to clearly and unambiguously confer a private right of action. It has to have, quote, rights creating language. So this is like what you're talking about, privileges. The long and the short of it is that this is a very complicated and increasingly frustrating area of the law, because the Supreme Court is hell-bent on trying to narrow the number of statutes that have, quote, rights-creating language, meaning that, like, they want to make it increasingly difficult for private individuals to enforce rights, like whether it's under Medicaid or a whole host of other statutes. Many circuits have found, including the Fifth Circuit for a very long time, have found that this statute does create a private right of action. Mm-hmm. So now the Supreme Court, of course, said, no, it does not.
That's right.
It does not. A private person can't do shit about shit under Medicaid at all. The state can do whatever it wants. And, you know, like, there's a remedy. The Secretary of Health and Human Services can, you know, bitch at them and maybe take their money away. The significance of that is that Planned Parenthood has no way to challenge this in federal court. You're the provider that's been kicked out. There's like a due process that's different in every state, but where you can say like, the reason you kicked me out is unjust, yada yada. So like there's an avenue to like try to do something that's generally never going to work, because it's within this, in a situation like this, it's within the same state system that just chose a highly politicized reason to protectually kick you out.
Yeah.
Right. But so there's that, but there's no way to get just like a court, in particular federal court, to intervene without this. This was actually like a genius idea that Planned Parenthood came up with years ago, that like, wait, no, our patients have a right.
Yeah.
Our patients have a right under Medicaid to be able to see us, the provider of their choosing. Decisions like this are effectively unchallengeable.
Mm-hmm. So Gorsuch wrote the opinion, 6-3. I guess what I was thinking about is like, how does it square with like the Trump administration, if they're saying that like the government can't demand that states do X as a condition of getting this money. Because I feel like that is some of what was like embedded in this opinion, even though that wasn't like the top line. Like, so how can Trump say that, you know, universities, organizations that are receiving federal funding, grants, like they have to comply with this like anti-DEI agenda?
Yeah, so I think that really actually gets more to like the Thomas concurrence, which I know you want to talk about as well, which of course is like typical fucking Justice Thomas, like batshit crazy stuff of like.
Let me just answer a question that no one fucking asked me.
Yeah, well, and I mean, we'll get into it, but I mean that the two things that he raises that like he, you know, doesn't like about like, you know, basically all civil rights litigation, I mean, it would breathtakingly take away people's ability to challenge government action in huge ways. So whether the federal government can put those conditions on schools is a separate issue. What the analogy here would be is whether a student can sue their own school based on whether the school is or is not complying with those conditions. Okay,
somebody file that lawsuit, because I want to know.
Well, let me tell you. What the Thomas thing like really calls into question is that what you can do as a student, of course, is you can sue under Title IX. Title IX like has been clearly defined as having a private right of action. What Thomas would say is that it does not.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
so I mean, I bring a ton. I personally bring a lot of Title IX litigation, and like as I was reading like all of the Gorsuch, before I even got to the Thomas part, then I was like, you know, man, I want, you know, these conservatives, like, I'm sure they would love to get the private right of action part under Title IX, which is somewhat ironic, I will say, because although I bring that litigation, a lot of litigation in that area is on behalf of men. There's a ton of activist lawyers in that area that like are very anti-transgender rights, like very just pro men's rights. Like this is going to be a role turn for the worse for them if this is the outcome. Like they've been like massively advocating for all kinds of the shit that like the Supreme Court is doing, including in Scrimeti. But yeah, like it's like the monster you created. Like it might turn out that they say that like, oh no, you guys don't have a right to enforce any of this shit either.
I'm going to read a little bit from Thomas's concurrence in this. So again, Thomas writes separately because he wants to answer a question that no one fucking asked him.
Right. That's
because he's got something to say about it.
And he very specifically said, I mean, he has done this before. Others of the conservatives have done this before. This is one of the most explicit, though. They're signaling to litigants, you know, like if someone were to bring a case that had this argument, I think that we should reverse all of our precedent on X, Y, and Z. I mean, he actually like literally says that
I'm gonna read it. Yeah, okay. Notwithstanding its origin as an extraordinary remedy passed during Reconstruction to protect basic civil rights against oppressive state actions, Section 1983 now serves as simply one more weapon in the litigant's arsenal. In a footnote, he says, given Section 1983's Reconstruction era context, it also is questionable whether statutory 1983 actions can be based on laws besides those enacted under Congress's Reconstruction Amendments enforcement powers. Re-examination may be warranted as to whether 1983 even supplies a freestanding cause of action.
Yeah. That last part was, I was like, oh my God.
You have to read Thomas's footnotes.
No, I know.
Always.
All of that concurrence is jaw-dropping, honestly. He's saying two enormous things here. One is that he doesn't believe that any spending clause statutes confer a private right of action that can be enforced under 1983. So that's again like Title IX.
Right.
That's like, I mean, obviously that was an issue at Medicaid, but like, so anytime the federal government is like, hi, we're giving you money and so you have to do X, Y, and Z, that like none of those things should a private person be able to enforce. So that's huge. And then probably the bigger part, and this is, I think, his point where he's winding up to with this shit, is that like that he thinks that like too many rights have been recognized under 1983. That like it was intended to have like like voting right, just whatever was like recognized as the right during Reconstruction.
1871.
Yeah.
1871.
That's right. But so that, which I was kind of like, whatever, blah, 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 blah. I don't care. I don't know what those rights were, whatever, blah, 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 blah. But like, then of course, like the example, as a lawyer, I was like, oh no, I know where this is going. Because then he uses the example though of one of the very early cases where they're the due process cases. You only have the right to due process if you have a property or liberty interest that the state is trying to take, and they're doing it without due process of law. So that's always the first part of the inquiry, is like, is there a property or liberty right here? So like with things like with those benefits, then the state, you have the right to a hearing before the state can say, we're kicking you out. It's like the same as like a license. Like if you have a license to practice law, a license to do anything, you have a property right in that license that the state has to give you some process to dispute it before they can take it away.
Yeah.
Like there's lots of shit they can just take away. So you have to have a property or liberty interest. You have a liberty interest in the right to an education and the right to your degree. So like I bring so separate from Title IX, I bring due process cases that are about like my client has a liberty interest in their education and their right to get this education at this school. The school accepted them, blah, 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 blah. You can't kick my kid out without due process. You have a liberty interest in pursuing the career of your choice. So this comes into play with doctors. The state can't just take away like your, not just your license, but make it impossible for you to practice medicine or the type of medicine that you want to practice without due process. Like, I'm assuming that Thomas would say that none of that is legitimate. That basically there's hardly any rights that are recognized by the due process clause, and for sure that can be enforced through 1983. It would be so very, very hard to vindicate your rights as a private person if he was correct. And the flip side being, because he doesn't think they are rights and you shouldn't have the right to vindicate it, is that it would make it so easy for the state governments in particular, but also the federal government, to do whatever the fuck they want.
He says we should revisit the threshold question of what constitutes a right under 1983. Because we interpret statutes at the time of their enactment, the answer to that question turns on how ordinary readers would have understood the phrase rights, privileges, or immunities in 1871. So basically, if your rights weren't recognized in 1871, women, voting rights really for black people, I mean, you know, for black women, certainly.
Sure.
Then you don't have these rights. Like Thomas wouldn't agree that you have these rights, or you could bring any sort of litigation under 1983.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, what I think he's more getting at is just like what the concept of a right was then. And it wouldn't be any of the things that we're talking. It wouldn't be, you know, any of those property or liberty interests. It would be like how like a person on the street thinks of what property is and thinks of what liberty is, right? So like your liberty is whether the government can throw you in jail or not, and your property is like your house, you know, like your car or whatever.
Can I just say that this whole like history and tradition analysis is like, it's absurd.
It's insanity. It's insanity. And I love, of course, I mean, in his opinion, he states that like, that it's a fact.
Right.
Like that's in the Constitution.
But also
the Constitution must be, like, that's your theory. That's your theory. But you're saying it as if that's like, that's the law, that's how it's done.
But also the way that they do that analysis is so fucking infuriating, because they basically take like what a cherry-picked group of a few white men thought, you know, who wrote over, you know, some short period of time, 250 years ago. And they're like, well, if they didn't say it, then it doesn't exist.
That's right. And like why it's so flawed and so frustrating is like very apparent in like the stuff I'm talking about. Is that like, you know, whether you had a property interest in a license, maybe that would be something that would have been like conceived of. Whether you have a property interest like in the right to receive like Social Security or like Medicaid benefits, like those things didn't exist. Like they didn't have an opinion about that. It didn't fucking exist.
Yeah.
So like that's the purpose of like, you know, looking at what would, you know, the not originalist theory, the like, you know, the Constitution is a living, breathing document, is that like new things crop up. Like, are they similar to the old things or are they not similar to the old things? As opposed to just like, are they the old things?
Yeah. Yeah, because their analysis is like, well, then we can't regulate technology, like any of this stuff that they never said anything about, you know, how we are going to, they actually never really said anything definitively about parties, like, you know, parties, campaign finance. I mean, also, I just want to say, so if history and tradition were the final word here, then like basically half of the people in the room hearing these cases and deciding these cases
wouldn't be
like they wouldn't be in the room to even argue them. So like if they're committed to this,
including
then, like,
Justice Thomas, of course.
If they're committed to this, then fucking Thomas and Barrett should resign.
That's right.
Okay. We're going to talk about Mahmoud v. Taylor. Okay. I have done a very deep dive on this case. It is extremely concerning for me. Okay. So the background on this case is that there were Maryland parents that were upset because Montgomery County School Board, they approved books with like LGBTQ plus characters and themes for the language arts curriculum. So these were books that had been approved that teachers were encouraged to use in some way in the classrooms as part of language arts curriculum, not like as a separate like Pride Month, you know, thing or whatever.
Were they required to use them?
So they were encouraged to use them. It is unclear, again, because this case came to the court, as a lot of these cases now do,
without a full record.
Record. So originally the school board had an opt-out policy, but then like so many parents were opting out for all kinds of reasons, and it kind of became unmanageable because this isn't, again, it's not a separate unit like sex ed class or like health class or, you know, whatever. It's like embedded into language arts curriculum.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you have like half of the students who are opting out, then you essentially are having to create like a duplicate language arts program for these students. It
yeah,
was,
or
it
like
was unmanageable.
like putting half the kids in recess. Like you guys go over here and do this other project while I teach to the other classes. But I mean,
it's ridiculous. So the parents got pissed because there was no opt out. So they say that having these books in the schools, having the schools use these books, and there being no opt-out violates their religious beliefs and therefore their constitutional rights, and, to like free exercise of religion, right?
Right. Free exercise to hate.
Well, yeah, exactly. We're going to get to it.
Basically.
So the attorney for the parents started the argument.
Mr. Chief Justice, and may it please the court. Parents everywhere care about how their young children are taught sexuality and gender identity. That's why nearly every public school in the country that provides sexuality education requires parental consent first. But Montgomery County is an extreme outlier, insisting that every elementary school student must be instructed that, among other controversial matters, doctors guessed at their sex when they were born, and that anyone who disagrees is hurtful and unfair. The board does not dispute that under its theory, it could compel instruction using pornography, and parents would have no rights.
Right out the bat, it is like an extremely inflammatory, argument that he's presenting on behalf of these religious parents.
To a receptive audience, to this guy's credit. Come on.
Big time.
And to be clear, then, these are the books that we're talking about are works of fiction, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
They're books about two gay mice.
Yeah. So I mean, right. So I mean, in other words, these are works of fiction that may bring these issues just into discussion. No one's being instructed. This isn't like in science class that this is what people are being instructed on.
That's right.
It seems like a pretty big difference to me. But
anyway. I will say, just to be fair, that alongside these books, teachers were given supporting materials that were if when you're using these books in your language arts curriculum, things come up, here are some suggestions of how to handle those situations, right? And so they were calling that instruction. Okay. But the whole oral argument really turned on whether the children were being exposed to LGBTQ plus issues. And again, because this came up without a very robust record, it was unclear as to did the teachers have to use these? How were they being used? Yeah. Were they just in the classroom? A lot of this was part of the oral argument. But if they're just in the classroom or they're just being read during class, is that exposure coercive? You know, is it coercing children to believe a certain thing, and that somehow or another violates the parents' right to raise their children,
which this
according to their religion.
I think there's probably gonna be some overlap with this and the Scrimeti case too. That in terms of what the remedy is and or what the government's role should be, right? That maybe then, the answer isn't that parents can just fully opt out, but that states can't compel teachers to teach this, or that, instructions that they're given have to have, that they're presenting have to have multiple views or whatever. Something that's on the side, that moderates.
Right.
But doesn't just say well, we don't care. The state can do whatever they want.
Yeah.
Or I guess in this situation, parents can do whatever they want.
Yeah. So Sotomayor was on point during oral arguments, and she was haven't we made it abundantly clear that mere exposure to things that you object to is not coercion and doesn't count as a violation of your rights?
I understood from the record that all that was required is that the books be put on the bookshelf. If that's all that's required, is that coercion? Or haven't we made very clear that the mere exposure to things that you object to is not coercion?
you might be exposed to all kinds of things that you object to.
At school.
Right. And so, like, she was, like, really digging into this.
Is looking at two men getting married, is that the religious objection?
The lawyer for the parents is like, well, it depends on the religious beliefs of that parent. You know, I mean, it was all this hedging.
Again, it would depend on the individual beliefs of the clients. For example, many parents would object to their child being exposed to something like pornography or extreme violence. It would vary.
We're not going there.
And then Alito jumps in, of course, as he is wont to do. And he was like, it is very clear that these books, like, have a moral message. You know?
Uncle Bobby gets married to his boyfriend Jamie, and everybody's happy, and everything is, it portrays this. Everyone accepts this, except for the little girl, Chloe, who has reservations about it. But her mother corrects her. No, you shouldn't have any reservations about this. As I said, it has a clear moral message.
Wait a minute. The reservation is about...
Can I finish, please? It has a clear moral message.
I mean, the Bible has, like, a moral message. I mean, I'm sure he'd be,
the Ten Commandments.
Yeah.
I was literally
totally
the whole time listening to the oral arguments and also then reading the opinion. I'm like, I mean... The 10, like forcing the 10 Commandments.
Which, I mean, of course, right now the Supreme Court has said that they can't do that, but we'll see what they say once Louisiana's case goes back up.
They still shouldn't be able to. Like, I mean, where they come down on this,
Exactly.
There's some hedging.
It's not, but that's not going to be objectionable, Michelle.
Right.
It's moral, but it's not objectionable.
Well, it's objectionable to me. I mean, he goes on and on about like Uncle Bobby's wedding book or whatever has like this very clear message. Everybody should be happy about Uncle Bobby's marriage to his male partner or whatever. And, Alito is incredibly offended by that. He cannot get off of it. It's insane.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. But then, what was really interesting in the oral arguments, and I really appreciated this, is Kagan. And, I'll note that Kagan is Jewish. And, like, this comes up for a lot of Jewish families a lot. Like, my own family, I being raised in the South, like, constantly... my mom was really concerned about like, okay, now we're praying in school, like,
sure, what are you being exposed to?
Right, exactly.
Yes, that is very differential from our values.
Yeah. Yes. But also just like, okay, well then like, are these religious values going to interfere with like the quality of education that my child is getting? Because there's a slippery slope.
If it's in a school and a sincere religious parent has an objection, that objection is always going to result in an opt-out. No matter what the instruction is like, no matter what the materials are, no matter how old the kids are. Once we articulate a rule like that, you're going to have a lot of parents, it seems to me. I don't think you can say just because it hasn't happened. Once we say something like what you are asking us to say, it'll be like, opt-outs for everyone.
If like the opt-outs become unmanageable, then are we then just like the schools are just deciding, well, we can't really, basically run two schools because we have religious parents here and, ones that actually want their children to live in the world as it exists, and
well, that's
so we're just
problem.
Not going to do. We're not going to like have anything that might offend anyone.
Yes.
But there's all kinds of shit that might 100%. Be objectionable.
When a religious person confronts anything in a classroom that conflicts with her religious beliefs or her parents, that the parent can then demand an opt-out.
It's really the latter, Your Honor.
This is a rule that applies as well to a 16-year-old in biology class saying, I don't, the parents say, I don't want my child to be there for the classes on evolution or on other biological matters which conflict with my religion. It would apply just as well to that. You're basically saying opt out for anything. It's really the parents that get to decide, assuming that their beliefs are sincere, right? It's really the parent that gets to decide. Doesn't matter the kid's age, doesn't matter sex, not sex. Doesn't really matter this whole idea, I suppose, of pressure or coercion. If like just looking at a book would be, in conflict with religious principles, that would be enough.
Schools around the country already have these very broad opt-out policies across the curriculum. In Hawaii for anything controversial, in Arizona for anything that parents deem harmful. And we just don't find these kinds of cases or these kinds of burdens where parents are bringing extreme examples.
I mean, you and I talked about this when this case was first, I don't know if it was argued or decided, but yeah, I mean, like, this concept that they're proposing, and that apparently the Supreme Court has now sanctioned, of, like, you know, being able to opt out because, like, a parent basically doesn't like it and has, like, some ability to put it in a religious context, right? Like, that's really what, you know, we're doing here. Is like, which, I mean, of course, you know, some people's religion also doesn't believe that, like, you know, black and white people should marry.
Sotomayor brings this up. She's like, look,
there's a lot of things.
Of parents suing all over the country
people's
for
religious beliefs don't believe that like, you know, medical care,
or that women should work outside of the home.
Right.
You know, parents with kids really don't have a lot of time to be suing the school board, and they're looking for a reasonable compromise.
I have a whole list of cases where parents have objected to biographical material about women who have been recognized for achievements outside of their home, because some people believe women should not work. So too, parents have objected to teachers reading books featuring divorce, interfaith marriage, or in modest dress. Forget about the evolution, because that's come too. You've just said, are these all coercive?
Well, again, it's whatever coercive means, they could create a burden. This court has defined burden very simply, that if someone is trying to exercise a sincere religious belief and the government is prohibiting or inhibiting their ability to exercise, that creates a burden.
If someone's prohibiting just looking at something that they object to, that's burdening their religion.
There's a lot of religious
no limiting
beliefs.
principle
here. And that's always a problem.
Yes.
It's always a problem.
Yeah. And, like, you know, Justice Jackson asked, like, well, what if the teacher is gay?
What if we have a teacher who is gay and has a photo of a wedding on her desk? Is a parent able, or could they opt out of having their student be in that classroom?
Well, we think no, because the student, the student may claim a burden, but on the question of the student doesn't have the right to tell a teacher what to say. The teacher has speech rights that would.
But I guess I don't understand that, given your argument. I mean, so, you know, example one, we have a gay teacher in the classroom, and they have a wedding photo on their desk, and the children are exposed then to the same kinds of picture that you say is in the book that you don't want children to be exposed to. What about the parent, the teacher showing pictures from the wedding, or the teacher goes off to get married and comes back and talks about their spouse? Do we have opt-out provisions for children in that situation?
Again, we think the same rules would apply. And if you were in a system...
The same rules would apply. So this is not just about books. This is about exposure to people of different sexual orientations, and the sincerely held objection that children shouldn't be exposed to this.
Is this decision limited to the curriculum?
No.
Okay.
It basically says parents get an opt-out if it offends their religion.
Exposure.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing...
I do want to make this note, though, because I want to be fair, because I spent a lot of time with this case. And one of the things that was really frustrating, and I think that we need to be very careful about on, like, you know, the liberal side of the aisle here. Part of the reason that I think that they went so far with this case is because the religious parents were able to include in their briefs a lot of evidence taken out of context of board members, like school board members' statements that, you know, indicated that they may have had some kind of hostility to the religious objections that the parents were bringing. And I think that did not help this case.
Yeah.
This was probably not a very good case.
Well, that's why they brought it. Both you and I don't think that religious objections are bullshit, or like just in the abstract, or are objectionable in and of themselves. I mean, I fully think that if you're a Jewish student and people are praying in school, you shouldn't have to do that. I mean, all of the stuff that's like, there's so many contexts in which like the compulsory issues related to religion are very real, and that the government can be doing that.
Yeah.
I am not at all religious. That's also protected. That I don't have to participate in religious blah 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 blah.
And there was that case, like, I don't know, last year, the year before, like recently, of like the coach that was like praying before the football games, and like parents objected to that, and like it probably would bother me. But like it wasn't the situation in which the members of the football team were being required to participate in the prayer.
Which that is to me is a huge difference. I agree with that. Yeah. And so I think, just saying for the record that like, I don't, it's not that I don't think that like there are valid religious objections, or that it isn't something that, schools and the courts and everybody should take seriously. But like, we're really getting into here, though, just about, like different ideas being presented in schools. And that actually is the point of school.
Every day in public elementary school classrooms across the country, children are taught ideas that conflict with their family's religious beliefs. Children encounter real and fictional women who forego motherhood and work outside the home. Children read books valorizing our nation's veterans who fought in violent wars. And children in Montgomery County read books introducing them to LGBT characters. Each of these things is deeply offensive to some people of faith, but learning about them is not a legally cognizable burden on free exercise.
To present all sorts of different ideas for then students to figure out what they believe.
And if you don't want your fucking kid exposed to them, then fucking homeschool them.
Yeah.
Or put them in private school. Now that they're like getting all these fucking vouchers to take the fucking, I don't agree with the vouchers, I'm opposed to the vouchers, but you know what? A lot of fucking places have vouchers. Take the fucking voucher and put your kid in a religious school, and get the fuck out of the schools where like sane,
that are
secular
public
people,
schools.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, so we're like supposed to be, educating people who live in the public with the view of the like. There's many views in the public. The part that worries me about it from so there's a practical standpoint for schools, as we've already talked about, which is just like, oh my God. I mean, maybe we're just gonna have to try to like, I don't know, get rid of everything objectionable, quote unquote.
Right.
Because like it's too difficult to manage, which first of all, that's not only just huge disservice to like, what the ideas people are going to be taught, it's also going to make like the curriculum extremely boring. Like no kid's going to want to fucking read all that shit. Like what's the least objectionable stuff? Like that's the stuff you least want to read when you're a kid. But I also worry from the parent side. So like, I have a nephew, his mom has different views than like our family, and I could see her or parents like her, if they got a form like this, that would just be like, they're, without really giving it a lot of thought, their instinct would be like, oh yeah, like opt out, but like doesn't really care that much, or if she knew more about it, wouldn't necessarily come down on that side, but that like there's gonna be sort of a middle group of parents that like might be likely to just be like, oh yeah, no, I don't want that, without really like thinking it through that much. And then those kids like just like, they're just not going to be literally exposed to different ideas.
Yeah. The broadness of this opinion, which, of course, is another 6-3, and it's written by Alito, who like loses his fucking mind. I'm not, this is why I didn't ask you to read this one. But I mean, one of the things that's like so insane about it is that you're also asking the schools to like predict what might be objectionable. Right. Like they're, just supposed to like have some sort of assumption. Well, no, they're not going to go through the process of doing that. They're just like, as they're discussing curriculum and like, hey, are we going to teach this? Are we going to teach this? Are we going to use this book? And somebody's going to be like, I don't know, a parent might have an objection. Okay, well then no.
Right.
Right. Like, then it just gets kicked. I mean,
which again,
it's like this like chilling effect. It's the like gag order by proxy.
And like, how does the opt out work? the Supreme Court never cares about how anything works. So yeah, your shrug, I assume, is that they're never concerned about the nuts and bolts of how things actually work.
A big part of the problem is that they do not care about, like, they have an agenda.
I mean, my point is, I mean, like,
and they don't care about the
do you send the parents the titles of all the books? Do you send them what's the process?
They're going to figure it out, and then they're going to do it wrong, and someone else is going to sue, and it's just going to keep. And then the Supreme Court's going to be like, "Why is this here? We decided this.
Right?
We weren't clear." And they're assholes about. I mean,
they are for sure. This is their general MO is putting forth directives that like. People on the ground are like, well, I mean, not just like we're talking about like what are the consequences be like, how are we supposed to do this?
Right.
Correct.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, do we send a list of the ideas we're going to teach? Do we send a list of the books we're going to teach? Does this count in science too? Do we have, do we have to revise it every year to,
It's insane. It's insane.
And also, again, a problem with the not enough of a full record, right? Is that like some of that would have worked its way through, because part of that issue would have been like, is there, with all of these issues with the state, it's like, is there a more narrow approach that they can be taking? Is there an alternative approach that all that would have been, there would have been ideas that were presented about what we could do, what we could not do. Would this be hard? Would it not be?
Well, I have two more, kind of fundamental points on this. Like, one of the things that really bothers me about this is like school boards are elected, right? A democratic system put these people in charge.
Supposedly the Supreme Court, is all in for, as again, we'll talk about with Scrimeti. I mean, it's always the we've got to defer to, the policies of the elected officials, they're the ones who are supposed to be vetting that, not us.
Yeah. Well, not in this case, because the solution for the parents are twofold. Campaign against the school board, put people on,
or even just go there and lobby to them.
Well, they did do that, but I mean,
but in general, that's considered an avenue of the democratic process.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe you'll convince them next time.
Process and try to get the school board that you want. That's gonna, make sure that Uncle Bobby's wedding isn't on a fucking bookshelf in your kid's classroom, which is absurd, but like whatever. That is a pathway that is open to you. The other pathway is to get the fuck out of the public school system, which is what I would prefer.
Take your shit, take your racist, homophobic shit, pack it up, and move it somewhere else.
I want to mention the dissent. I want to read just like a little bit of quote.
Who wrote the dissent?
So Sotomayor, and she was joined by Kagan and Jackson. And essentially this is, their big warning is that like this really does undermine kind of the core purpose of public education, as you were saying, like exposing kids to different ideas and different viewpoints so that they can like be critical
and like
thinkers.
P.S. the people do come out of that with all different thoughts. I mean, I don't know where Stephen Miller went to fucking high school, but I know that he's from like Santa Monica. Like he's from like a very liberal area. Like he came out with like wildly different views than a lot of the people around him. The notion that just like what you're being taught in school is like indoctrinating you.
Yeah.
Like and that it should only, whatever the indoctrination should only be one-sided. The whole point is supposed to be that like you're being exposed to different ideas. Maybe like they fucking hated that book. That was their least favorite book, and so like they really don't agree with Uncle Bobby's.
I hated reading all the goddamn Protestant bullshit that I had to read in American literature.
Yeah, it just made you more Jewish.
Yeah, no, seriously. I mean, I remember when my teacher like assigned me like the task of like reading and providing like the analysis of that, like Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. Do you remember this? If people have never read Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, it's like some weird Protestant screed. Like, and I'm like, can we just refrain from having the Jew in the class? Like,
but not from having you read it, right? You wouldn't have objected. I'm sure you hated it, but like you wouldn't have objected, and your mom wouldn't have objected to you reading it.
No, and she didn't. And she was like, okay, well, if they want to hear your thoughts on it, let's.
Yeah.
Then so I gave him an earful.
Again,
this is what
I hate read stuff all the time. Like every one of these goddamn opinions.
Oh, 100%. Thank you very much. I was going to say that. So I just want to read a quote from the dissent. Sotomayor says that obviously this decision threatens the very essence of a public education because it, quote, strikes at the core premise of public schools that children may come together to learn not the teachings of a particular faith, but a range of concepts and views that reflect our entire society.
Yeah, yeah.
Just beautiful. Okay. The project of this court imposing their own religious beliefs, their own worldview is really, really, really terrifying right now. I mean, you know, these decisions are impacting, you know, a particular issue, right? Each of these cases impact a particular issue, but most people believe that even if you have strong religious beliefs, you're living in a world in which you have to balance those, right? Against like the fact that you live in a society where not everyone shares those beliefs.
Right. You could have just started a crazy cult and live in the woods.
Right.
Yes, yeah.
And like most people understand that like we have to share space with people that have different views. But this court does not. And what they are saying in their opinions is that no, it's fine. You can completely impose your own beliefs on people like in the public sphere. This was a great discussion. Thank you for doing your homework, Ellie. I know it sucked. I'm sorry, but our listeners will thank you for it.
So they don't have to read it.
Yeah, you should thank Ellie in the comments. You can send us an email.
I did tell Michelle that I wanted to kill her, and she had her that she made me read these opinions, and also that I only read like 30% of them, and I still wanted to kill her. Yeah, it's enough to really,
But we want to hear your seriously moments, so send those to us. And
and then give us your ideas for what we should cover in season 2. Michelle's got tons of ideas. I've got none. So let us know.
Let us know what you're interested in hearing us blabber on about.
Yeah.
You know.
Bitch about.
Yeah,
lots
two catty bitches.
That's right.
Anyway, we're happy to be back, and thanks for listening. We will talk to you all next week.
See you later.
Seriously is presented by Lift Louisiana, a nonprofit organization advocating for reproductive health rights and justice.